It was not once upon a time, it was precisely the 27th day of January in the year 1849. Gold had been discovered in California some 12 months before, and now, in a rush, the gold rush was on. The California fever was sweeping through the cities and towns and villages like heady wind. Men were buying picks and shovels and trying to get from the East Coast to the West Coast as soon as possible, and all at once. Bah! This California fever is spreading like a plague. New England will be left half empty in another 6 months by grabs. Anything with a keel is calling itself a gold ship and putting to sea. Scows with rotten bottoms, fishing trawlers, whaling ships, Argonauts of old, they are, chasing after the golden fleece. Every man, Jack, thinks he will make this fortune. Bah! It is a 15,000-mile voyage around Cape Horn to San Francisco. It is not the beginning of a race that counts, sir, but the end. If I win the race, I will get command of a new clipper ship building in the yards. She'll be the pride of the seas, and I want her, sir. Every day counted. It was fine with him that Captain Swain was making a race around the Horn. The captain was in a hurry, too. Still, it would be months before the Lady Wilma dropped her anchor in San Francisco Bay. There would hardly be enough time to complete the voyage, reach the mines, make a fortune, and return to Boston before Aunt Maribel had to sell everything. But try they must. By this time, you have found my note on the tea service and learned that Praiseworthy and I have joined the gold rush to California. I am writing this at sea. Please do not worry, as we are well and happy and getting plenty of good exercise. The ship is very crowded. Everyone is anxious to get to California before the gold is gone. We see other ships on the sea almost every day. They are all California bound. I think it's going to be very crowded in the gold fields. As San Francisco and the end of their long voyage drew near, the gold seekers began to trim their beards again. They packed and repacked their sea chests. They scrubbed their clothes, and they hummed, whistled, and sang the same tune. I'm going to California with a washboard on my knee. Jack's thoughts raced ahead to the goldfields. What would it be like? Would there be grizzly bears and outlaws and wild Indians? Certainly, he told himself. It was an untamed place, wasn't it? She entered the sparkling narrows of the Golden Gate and finally came out into San Francisco Bay. The city stretched across the sand dunes like something that had sprung up the night before. There seemed to be more ships in the harbor than houses on the shore. Gentlemen, said Praiseworthy, tugging on his white gloves, I believe we've won the race. After a 15,000-mile voyage and 5 months at sea, the gold seekers had arrived. The city rang to the sound of hammers. Buildings were going up everywhere, and sand dredger was pounding the air. Men stood in the doorway of shops, ringing handbells. Auction! Auction going on. Fresh eggs, just arrived from Panama. Step inside, gents. Cheroots, chewing tobacco, onions at auctions. 50 bushels just came in from the Sandwich Islands. Also calamine pills, castor oil, and carpet jacks. Gold's heavy, he explained. Nothing heavier. Even the yeller dust sinks to the bottom if you keep working the pan, like this. Then he handed the wash pan to Jack and taught him the motion. The water turned brown from the dirt and mud that had gathered in Quartz Jackson's whiskers hairs. Finally, he poured off everything but a thin residue at the bottom of the pan. Jack's eyes opened like blossoms. Gold dust. Why, look there, the miner roared with laughter. The boy's panned himself some color. I figured I'd scratch enough pay dirt in my beard to assay out about $14 an ounce. Since I gave you the whiskers and all the gold is yours. Their adventure in barbering had paid the expenses nicely. There was gold dust left over, and Praiseworthy had poured it into the little finger of his left white glove. He had made a list of the gold camps the miners had banded, and now he studied the names. Chili Gulch, Grizzly Flats, Timbuktu, he muttered. They sounded like dreadful places to take a growing boy. They sounded glorious to Jack. Don't worry about me, Praiseworthy. I'm thinking of your Aunt Maribel. What would she think if I rated a place like Bedbug or Whiskey Flat or Hangtown? Angel's Camp, she might approve of that, but they say it's a fearful place. Let me see. There's Rough and Ready, there's You Bet, and there's Humbug. Not to mention Rawhide, Roaring Camp, and Cutthroat. Well, what'll it be, Master Jack? One place sounds as bloody thirsty as the next. Hangtown, said Jack. They were almost there, weren't they? A stage of leaving for the mines at 2 o'clock. A shore cannon went off, raising a cloud of dust to announce the arrival of the boat. Townspeople flocked to the river. Praiseworthy and Jack carried their picks and shovels, gold pans, and carpet bags through the crowd. A stage was leaving for the mines at 2 o'clock. To raise their fare, the butler and the boy had no choice but to sell sell off a pick and shovel. Mining tools were in great demand and prices were astonishing. The pick and shovel brought $100 each. With 10 washbins under their arms and the pick and shovel across their shoulders, they set out for the diggings. The day was hot and sweaty. When they reached running water, they saw miners crouched everywhere along the banks. They were washing gold out of the dirt in everything from wooden bowls to frying pans. "Anybody digging here?" asked Praiseworthy as they came to a bare spot. "Sure is," came the answer. "That's Buffalo John's claim." The butler and the boy moved upstream. Here and there, miners were shoving dirt into long wooden prows set in running water to catch the flakes of gold. "Anybody digging here?" asked Praiseworthy. "Yep," came the answer. "That's Jimmy from town's claim." "How do we stake a claim?" "Easy. Find yourself a piece of real estate nobody's working and pound 4 pegs in the corners. Put 10 cans on them so folks can see them. Rags will do, and you got yourself a legal claim. That's miner's law. As long as you work at least 1 day a month, it stays yours." He laughed and stroked his beard. "Of course, the other 30 days you gotta stand around shooting off squatters, claim jumpers. Let me show you how to wash out gold without water," Pitchpine Billy was saying. "Take your horn, spoon boy, and scrape me some dirt from the crack in that rock. It's places like that the Spangles like to hide. Is there any?" He poured the dirt in a small stream from first hand to hand, like sand in an hourglass, while at the same time blowing on it. Sand and pine needles scattered under the force of his breath. Poured again and again. Each time the handful of dirt grew smaller. Grain for grain, gold is 8 times heavier than sand. If you blow just right, the Spangles will fall and lighter stuff goes flying. "Around running water," explained Pitchpine Billy, "gold has a way of getting tangled in the roots of weeds and grass." He dipped water in the pan and washed the roots clean. He added more dirt until the washbin was better than half full. Then he began a pan using the same circular motion Quartz Jackson had showed them. "You get rid of rocks and slickens, little by little." "Slickens?" said Jack. "Mud with the gold worked out of it. Keep the pan working, dipping and working until the Spangles reach the bottom. Fish out the rocks. See how I'm letting the slickens spill over the edge of the pan? It takes practice, boy. At first you'll lose more color over the side than you'll have save in the bottom, but you'll get a hang of it." By late afternoon, the big hole was bigger and deeper than Praiseworthy's head. They rigged up a rope and lifted out dirt by the buckets full. There were men along the diggings coyoting for gold, and some shafts were as deep as wells. Jack took his turns at the bottom of the hole, filling buckets that were emptied into Long Tom. The Long Tom was a wooden sluice box set in the stream. Rushing water washed the dirt along the trough, and bits of gold were trapped in the iron riffles along the bottom. They pitched camp, and they broke camp. Day after day, they followed running water. They washed out prospects, scraped from behind rocks and boulders and stream bed. Spangles had a way of trapping themselves out of the current. When they found bits of color, they dug in. At times, Praiseworthy spent the entire day in his boots apart, swinging the pick in great arcs. Where the prospects looked good, they labored to follow the specks of gold to their source, which either disappeared or ended at someone's claim. Pay dirt eluded them, but the next bend in the river might make their fortune. They met other prospectors every day, and at times there seemed to be more pack mules and bureaus in the hills than jackrabbits. Jack had seen rockers made out of anything from provision boxes to hollowed-out logs. When finished, they had the look of cradles. He shoveled dirt into a hopper at the top, added water, and rocked the Spangles through the rifles in the bottom. Men could be found on every claim rocking the cradle, like grizzled nursemaids. Jack tried not to think about Boston. It would soon be time to start back, and all they had to show for their labors was a worthless map. The entire trip to California was beginning to look like a wild goose chase. But when they got the hole 4 feet deep, they couldn't go any further. They hit bedrock and struck gold. Jack nearly jumped a foot. "By the great horn spoon," he yelled. "Look, I see it, pay dirt." And Praiseworthy exclaimed, "Yeller as can be." The gold revealed itself in bits of sunlight trapped in the loosened earth. The two partners flung their hats in the air. In sheer exuberance, they clasped arms and swung around and around in the oblong pit. After the first day's washing, Praiseworthy went to Coloma to buy a Long Tom, and Jack stayed behind with the squirrel gun to keep an eye on things. Within 24 hours, miners had staked claims everywhere around them. The place quickly got the name Gravesdigger Hill. Praiseworthy and Jack worked from morning till night. They carried pay dirt bucket by bucket down the slope to the sluice box in the river. The hole grew wider and longer. They filled a buckskin pouch and tied it off at the top. Hour by hour, Praiseworthy swung the pick, and day after day, Jack emptied bucket after bucket into the Long Tom. Their fortune grew heavier. After almost 2 weeks of busting ground and shoveling dirt, their claim began to play itself out. The washings grew thinner and thinner. One by one, other miners gave up on Gravedigger's Hill. It had boomed, and now it was dying. The boomers pulled their stakes to follow rumors of some other gold strike. They had 11 heavy pouches of gold. worth a fortune in San Francisco. At Coloma, they traded in their pick and shovel, tent, and gold pans. They wouldn't be needing them anymore. They left Coloma on the stage, each with a revolver tucked in his belt. Jack rubbed his hand along the butt of the four-shooter. He felt invincible. The following morning, Praiseworthy and Jack climbed aboard the stage for Sacramento City. They were given a rousing send-off. Time was running out. Now that they had struck it rich, they had better hurry back to Boston. A steamboat was waiting in the river. They bought tickets and went aboard with their heavy pouches of gold dust. Sacramento City drifted far behind them. In 14 hours, they would be in San Francisco. Fine-looking country, Jack would agree. He sensed how much his partner hated to leave this rough, untamed territory. No one in Boston would think of referring to Praiseworthy as Bullwhip, and Aunt Maribel would put a stop to Jack's coffee drinking. But Boston is where they belong.